Just want to say how wonderful it is this morning to be joined first from our board commissioners here that we have with us today. Okay, and then as we get started, I'd also like to acknowledge Councilman Stokes, who is with us today. Thank you, Councilman Stokes. And as we get ready, I also want to point out to you that this will be, I think, the first CEO Institute in a long time where we are joined by the mayor of our city, Mayor Catherine Pugh. And I will tell you that when initially we were communicating, our team was communicating with the mayor's team about her schedule, the first response was, well, no, she's not going to be able to make it. She has other things. And then I got a call from the mayor, personally, who said, wait a minute, what time? And she made things happen and moved because she knew that this was the kickoff for a school year. She is a mayor that we have all seen very quickly and early in her tenure with feet to the ground proved that she is the city's education mayor, that she believes in our young people and the investment in them. And so, because she has made her way here today, I think it would be very appropriate to have the leader of our city officially open us with greetings. Thank you, Mayor Pugh.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. You know, I always have to start by saying giving honor and praise to God, just a privilege. The privilege to be with you all this morning. And let me just say how excited I am for you. Last week, I think I got an opportunity to greet 400 teachers, new teachers coming into our school system. And I just want to remind you all that I know that you come to do great work, and we really do appreciate it. But we want to continue to lift the bar for our young people. And as I said earlier, some of you may have still been on vacation, did not hear, that we've made Baltimore City Community College free for our young people. And while I've been bombarded by questions and challenges about why would I do that, because we should be making sure that our young people go to work, that there are training programs, uncertificated programs that they can be in. To me, that is one way to make sure that we know where our children are. But the other way is to inspire them to be all that they can be. And so I ask you all to do that as you touch them in your classrooms. Because what I do know, as I told someone, I was an urban youth once, too, and my parents didn't tell me about college because what they promised all 7 of us was a high school diploma, because they didn't think they could afford to send us. Free levels the playing field. Free allows children to aspire. Free allows parents to push their young people while you are pushing and stroking and lifting and educating and teaching them that they can be all they can be. So I want to thank you all for being principals in our public school system and leaders in our public school system, because it really does depend a lot on you. Because we cannot allow our children to leave our school system not knowing how to read, not knowing how to write, not knowing how to do math, because we can do this. Because many of them are challenged. Just yesterday, 55 individuals laying in front of City Hall, 5 of them with children, 1 with 8. And we made sure that we got the families with children immediately into housing. And we've got the other folks into a place where we can begin to deal with them on a daily basis and assist them. I share that with you because I don't think everybody realizes the challenges that many of your young people come into school with. And so I ask you to be patient with them, to understand that we are facing some challenges in our own city. And while I am up for every single challenge that we face, I know that things don't change overnight, but they can change, and they will change if we work hard at it. I tell folks, for me, this is 24/7 nonstop. I think I get about 3 or 4 hours sleep, but it really is about a mission to change the trajectory of our city, to change the narrative about Baltimore. This school that you are in today, and some of you have been here, and I know my principal is here and I love her dearly, was a vision that I had, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago now. And it took me 4 principals to get to one of the best. Stand up for a second. I said I wanted a fashion school, and this is what I mean by working together. And I found 2 individuals who worked with me. One was at that time the president of MICA, Fred Lazarus, and the other was Steve Ziegler, an architect. And we had a conversation about what I wanted and what could be. And this is the Baltimore Design School, because what we recognize is not just about fashion. Everything you can possibly think of has some form of design. Whether it is the chair that you sit in, the toothbrush that you pick up in the morning, the clothes that you put on your back, the building that you walk in, all of it is some form of design. And now apps, where people are creating different ways to do something every single day. So out of this building will come tomorrow's designers for this nation. And so I know that in each and every one of your schools are young people who can become principals like you, who can become teachers like you, who can become the President of the United States, doctors, lawyers, you name it, they can be it. But we've got to inspire them to that. So I ask you to continue to inspire, lift them up, give them your very best, let them know that they can be successful because you are. So bless you, continue your work, and on behalf of all of the citizens of Baltimore, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just thank you again to Mayor Pugh, who again came out because when she heard that this was a gathering of school leaders, both principals and teacher leaders, she made her way here. So one more round of applause, please, for the mayor of our city, Mayor Catherine Pugh. Thank you again, Mayor. Oh. Thank you, John. So now, this morning, and I do want to, again, just welcome everyone. Thank you to Commissioners Bendima and High Cupboard. They were in transition as we were coming. The board has been incredibly supportive over this last year. And I will say this, that it is good to be back and see you all. And I want to say a big thank you to my 2 youngest daughters who had the choice. They were not drafted when you see them. They came because they wanted to. For those of you who might remember, I have 3, so you will see that it was optional because my eldest smiled very nicely, her widest smile, and said, "I'll sleep in, thank you." And so that, and then he is not here, but I have to say a big, and thank you actually doesn't even really capture what it means when you are blessed enough to find a life partner that I have in my husband, Luis Antonio, who God only knows why he was okay with me doing this. And I think part of it is because he understands that this work is about the city, it is about the young people, and so for all of his personal support that he has given me this year and continues, I will say some of the advice that I give to young people early on when they try to map out, like at 21, what they're going to be at age 40, which is lovely, and I chuckle to listen to how they have planned everything out. And I mean something different by it than people probably meant back in 1740 or 1630. But I tell them all, if you are going to marry, make sure you marry well. Make sure you marry and join yourself with someone who is okay with and joined with your life purpose, because if not, it makes it so much harder. So a big thank you to him for making it so much easier. So, as we get started today, there's a couple things. First, I want to say a big thank you to all of you, and Commissioner Frank has just joined us. Thank you, Commissioner Frank. I want to say a big thank you because while it's easy and while a lot of, I don't want to say easy, while a lot of our colleagues across the state are also preparing to go back to school, the educators in this room represent the only group of educators who had to finish the year not only teaching well, leading well, modeling well, you also had to take your free time to advocate well. You did that. You could have said, it is enough for me to have to prepare to go to Annapolis. You could have said, it is enough for me to have to get on a bus or stand in front of elected officials to plead our case, but you didn't. You did that as your night job. And then you got back up the next morning, ready and prepared to serve our young people. So I hope that you are joining us. I hope you had some what I call wells of refreshing over the summer. How many people have gotten away for at least like a 4-day, 5-day weekend? Okay, if you have not, you don't get extra bonus points, okay? No bonus points for self-destruction, okay? If not, then you need to grab a little pocket, whether it's like 4 hours to shut away in the favorite room of wherever you live, and you need to give yourself that gift. Because right now, this year, this is buckle your seatbelts, because we have some work to do. So, what we're going to do today is I'm going to take some time this morning. We're going to frame a little bit of what the work is going to be the next 2 days, and I'm just going to do 2 basic things. You all know by now I'm long-winded, but I promise to give you little breaks in between, okay? Is that all right? So one of the things that we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit and dig a little bit more deeply into where are we now. And then the second part of what I'm going to do this morning is talk about where we're going. So real easy 2 parts. Where are we now? Where are we going? And so, and I have the clicker, right? I have the clicker, Jenny? Great. Well, maybe I don't. There we go. So, the where are we now? What's really interesting about the where we are now question for me is I love my job. I love being in Baltimore City. But if I'm really transparent, the thing that I absolutely can't get over a lot of times in this job, and the thing that I don't like about this job, is the lack of contact I have with young people on an ongoing basis. Like, that's the part that I miss. The cabinet will tell you from time to time, if I've had a rough week, I'm like, I can go back and run a school, right? I can go back and teach middle school, right? Because those are the days where the connection to what we do in this role is furthest away. So I got a gift this year from Principal Owens. Principal Worthy Owens, are you here? Where are you, darling? Is she here? Is she here? She's sick? Okay, that's fine. So this is great. This is an honor of her. So Principal Worthy Owens at Bernard Harris gave me a gift this year. And what happened was earlier this year, a lot of you probably know, we launched with Johns Hopkins and the Baltimore Health Department an initiative around getting our young people who need them glasses, right, as a way of connecting their ability to see, right, with how they're actually doing in class. And so we were there, and there were young people that I got a chance to meet, some of whom are here. And it was my way, as you know. I proudly wear glasses. I rarely put on contacts because they're just too bothersome. I can whip my glasses on and off. And so I got the chance to welcome a group of about 70 young people into what I affectionately call the Club of Four-Eyed Seeing People. And so I had the chance to do that, and as part of that, I got to meet a couple of young girls who are absolutely just vibrant and brilliant and wonderful. And I will say their first names because we're live streaming. I tend to be, because I'm a mom, I tend to be a little, when we're live streaming stuff, I tend to be a little bit protective about putting their pictures up. But Amira, Diera, and Kamori were good enough to not only really talk to me that day about what the glasses meant, but to actually join me for lunch during the course of the year. So I got a chance on an extended basis to connect with young people who are part of our schools and experiencing that. And in one of our lunches on the way, and I believe it was Amira, if I remember correctly, I got a call. And Principal Owen said, you know, I just want you to know ahead of time, and actually she called the office, she said, I just want Dr. Santelises to know that one of the girls is very nervous about coming because she lost her glasses, right? And I, which my girls will tell you, lose everything. So I said, don't even worry about it, absolutely, we'll be okay. So the girls come for this particular lunch, great exchange, great dialogue, vibrant, just intellectually stimulating conversation, asking me wonderful questions about that many of you would be asking about what people at central office do. And so they were very engaging, and we had this conversation. And then, as we proceed to share, and as with most relationships, when you start to feel comfortable, and I was actually surprised at how comfortable they felt fairly early in our exchanges, behind that scene, right, I get a chance to learn that one of the girls, Mom, and she was in 5th grade, had passed when she was 7 in a particularly challenging way. And that was why she wanted to go into medicine, right? And so she talked about why she wanted to be a doctor. And then we finally got around to Amira, who, you know, I processed with her, it's okay to lose your glasses, Dr. S loses the glasses. My eldest, who also wears glasses, lost her first 2 pair of glasses when we got her glasses in 3rd grade. And then what's really interesting is the story about why she found her glasses. Now, losing things is a childhood rites of passage, right? I mean, if you are in here and you never lost anything before the age of 12, raise your hand. Okay, yeah, I'm glad you kept it down, because we wouldn't believe you, right? So many of us think about you lose things, it's part of being a kid. You either replace it or it's nothing that you have to worry about replacing, you learn from it and you move on. Well, in Amira's case, she lost the glasses because the temporary housing in a family member's house that had taken them in, after they were pushed out, finally, in whatever the mood was for the day, got tired of them living there, gave them about a morning's notice to say, you got to get out. And in the hustle and bustle of getting out with about 2 to 3 hours notice, Amira couldn't grab her glasses. So she didn't have glasses. Now, what's interesting in part is that the way she lost the glasses is not the way my daughter loses her glasses. So that's one. The second piece, though, is that after the photo shoot, after the website pictures were posted from this vision day, there's a little girl who's left, not just assuming she's going to get another pair of glasses. So she has seen the board clearly for 4 months for the first time, because she has her glasses, right? She feels good about the glasses because, you know, she got the same color glasses that the CEO got. She's been wearing these glasses for 4 months. Not only does she lose them in a way that no little person should have to lose glasses, but on top of that, she's not sure she's going to get another pair. So she proceeds on, and with all of this behind her and around her, she still comes to my office, presents herself as if she is the future CEO of Baltimore City, and she presses on. So part of why, right, this story is important to me, because what's interesting is 2 of the 3 girls were graduating from 5th grade and getting ready to go on to middle school. And my girls went with me to our local children's bookstore, and they normally believe every time we walk through the door, that means they get to walk out with a book. And I said, not today. I'm not buying you a book. We're going to look for books for other kids. And so one of the books that we collectively selected was Brown Girl Dreaming. How many of you have read Jacqueline Woodson's Brown Girl Dreaming? Oh, if you have not, and you have a middle grades in your school, you need to read Brown Girl Dreaming. And so what's interesting is I was reflecting on this story, and a colleague of mine, Brooke Haycock, who you will get a chance to see tomorrow perform, sent me this quote as her, "Hope you have a good institute. This is what it is," and it triggered because this was the story I was getting ready to tell. So, because the room is incredibly large, I'm just going to, and because I love poetry, I'm just going to read this excerpt that Brooke emailed me. I hadn't planned to do this until she sent the email. And the excerpt is this: I am not gifted. When I read, the words twist, twirl across the page. When they settle, it is too late. The class has already moved on. I want to catch words one day. I want to hold them, then blow gently, watch them float right out of my hands. Jacqueline Woodson, Brown Girl Dreaming. So, when we think about context, when we think about where we are now, I want us to think about not the first layer of story for our kids, but I want us to think about, in very present ways, how our actions have extended, rippling impact. So it is about, can kids see? But it is about what interrupts that. It is not about one action with our young people and we can wipe our hands, pull the picture, post the pictures on the website and go home. But it is thinking about always the context in which they interact, right? It is linking the work that we do around things like words to how they then are able to navigate this terrain. So, present day, we have a lot of young people who will be coming back from spending a summer that is one of the most violent summers that our city has experienced. We have lost more of our young people this summer than we have in a long time. And I haven't checked in with Chief Ham, but we were monitoring it over the summer. And when I mean lost, I mean violently lost. So the faculty that I left at Excel Academy back in May, was it May when I came by, has lost an additional 2 kids over the summer. They had already lost 5, and after 25 years in public education, in urban centers, I can tell you I have never been in a school where I have had 5 children, young people murdered, not dead, murdered in 1 year. She now has 7. So when we talk about context, when we talk about the where we are now, let's situate the work in the reality of the communities, but in the trajectory of where we need to go. That's the urgency. Other folks in other districts across the country have to gin it up. They've got to figure out why they need to be urgent. You, my friends, we, my friends, have signed up for a place where I don't need to gin you up about urgency. You need to just open a newspaper. You need to just watch one nightly telecast of the news, and we're all really clear. And you situate it within the lives of your young people. So, where are we? Let's take a look. I don't know how many of you had the chance, did anybody get a chance yet to go to the Undesign the Red Line exhibit yet upstairs? Okay, great, because you guys were all kind of chuckling and getting your muffins and doing high fives with your colleagues. So, and that's okay, that's a good thing. That's why I'm saying it now. I took our cabinet and senior staff to see the Undesign the Red Line exhibit a few weeks ago. Commissioner Hike Hubbard was kind enough to arrange for our team to have an escorted visit. After we completed that visit, we thought it was important enough that we asked the curators of that exhibit to recreate it here for all of you. So we have that exhibit on the 3rd floor, is that right? 4th floor. So while you are here over the next 2 days before you leave, I want to encourage you to go take a look at that exhibit, not because I want to wallow in what was past, but as a student of history, if we do not ground ourselves in the reality of the past, we can't change the trajectory of where we are. Not really. We can fiddle around the edges, but there are deliberate decisions that get made every day that impact why certain kids get their glasses immediately replaced and don't even think twice about it, and why other kids have to wonder whether the 4 months that they were seeing is the last 4 months they're going to see. Okay? So let's just take a look where we are now. What's interesting about these maps, and again, this map, is that a lot of what we're seeing in the redlining maps from the 30s and 40s is actually very close to where we are right now. So a lot of the maps that we use, that we've been using, for those of you who have been coming to CEO and CAO institutes throughout the, since last year, a lot of the maps we're using are very reflective of what the same maps were, right? Back when it was intentionally legislated, right? It was intentionally legislated inequity. So the frame that we use when we make decisions has to be taking that into account. And we know that those still have impact even now. And I'm sorry, my eyes. So one of the things that's interesting about this and why I think it makes a difference, and this, by the way, is a quote. How many of you saw the 2 pieces from Baltimore City, former Baltimore City public school students in The Sun last week? Okay, if you haven't, I recommend that you do. It's great reading, and our kids were in The Sun, which is a good thing, but also what they had to say was particularly powerful. And so one of the things that I think is important for us to know in this context, and why it is important, is because it's very easy in the course of this work to try to, if you listen to bloggers, if you listen to just, you know, some of the narrative around our young people, you would think it is all about personal responsibility. Now, I am not negating personal responsibility. It absolutely is a quotient, without a doubt. But I will tell you, I know really wealthy kids that don't have personal responsibility. But their safety net is such that nobody ever really calls them on it because their livelihood is not dependent on their personal responsibility. They've got enough wealth built up that it doesn't have the same impact. Personal responsibility matters. The other piece that does matter is the decisions that we, those of us in power, whether we're sitting in a CEO position or we're looking at our class roster of 25 to 30 kids. We have the power within the decisions that we make to take a look and say, How are we going to shift this trajectory? So, one of the things that we've done, and for those of you who were here last year, you were at the CAO's Institute, we've developed within city schools what we're calling a community conditions index. And this index has kind of come together as the culmination of what we, all of these different neighborhood factors, life factors that we take into account. And what's really interesting about this is our way of putting in action the refrain from a song that I used to sing to my kids when I would say to them, they would say, well, why can't we stay up and watch this movie? Or why can't I read this book yet? You know, that kind of stuff, the problem when you have kids who read and then they start reading stuff you're not comfortable with them reading, you know that question? And the refrain on this song is, be careful, little ears, what you hear. And be careful, little ears, what you see. What I would say to us is we need to not only be careful about what we see, we need to be careful about what we don't see. And we need to be careful about what we don't hear and what we don't listen to. Because hearing these conditions should not change the standard, and we're going to get to that later on because you know I'm getting there. But it should say the way that we do our work changes, and we give more attention to and more deliberate mind power to what that means for how we actually make this a reality. So part of our effort on doing this during the fall was to create the Community Conditions Index. And what we did was we looked at those, the BINIA factors that we previewed last year, and we culled them down into kind of a more workable framework. And these are, so we had 2 indicators of disparity, access to resources, neighborhood stability, and safety. And part of what this has enabled us to do is to be able to say for us, as part of our district policy decisions, are we contributing to our own form of educational redlining, or are we undesigning the red line? Right? So what that means in real terms, so if you look at this, and again, this is an excerpt from the piece in The Sun that Kadwani Fidel wrote. And now this is one of our young people who wrote this. This isn't some researcher at Hopkins. This one of our young people wrote this, right? And most of the quotes, by the way, today are from our young people. Nonetheless, there are 2 Baltimores, and your zip code determines whether you live or die. So our young people know and experience where they are in the strata. So what we are holding ourselves accountable to is the same set of decision points. So we've mapped the city, and we've done that placing not only our schools, your schools, within that frame, but also our students. Where do our students come from within this frame? Now, within this, I think what's really important is to take into account not just the figures, not just the indicators, but I'm the kind of person who likes qualitative data and quantitative data. And so today, we're very fortunate that I think we have some of the best qualitative data we could bring you. And that is coming from the voices of our young people. And so now I would like to introduce, from the Positive Social Change Theater Performing Arts Program at Augusta Fells Savage, under the direction of Koli Tengela, I would like to introduce both of our performers today. Lonnie Raister, are you Lonnie? Great, nice to see you. And Lonnie is going into the 11th grade at Augusta Fells Savage. And then Ryan Williams, that's right, give a shout out, give a shout out. You see your principal's there smiling, right? Is that intimidating? You want her to leave? You okay? And then Ryan Williams, are you Ryan? Nice to meet you, Ryan. And Ryan's going into the 10th grade at Carver this year. Give a shout out. Very good. And so what I'm going to do is turn over the stage to, or the platform, to our very own Baltimore City public school students. Thank you both.
Hello, we are the Augusta Fowl Savage Institute of Visual Arts High School, Positive, Social, Change, Theater Performing Arts Troupe. Yeah, I was that boy that everybody picked on. Got called rude names, fat, ugly, soft, man, I heard it all. I told myself I had to stay strong. Don't show any emotions and everything will come along. Then life came behind my back and said, psych, lights out, food gone. And then that's when depression and anxiety kicked in. I was so worried about what people would think about me, I started to lose myself. At this point, I started to think that friends was the answer to my happiness. But I guess I was wrong, because eventually those friends said they hit my back and that I'm not alone. Really, they was being phony and they disowned me, leaving me lonely. I thought to myself, when will it end? I shouldn't have to walk with a fake smile, pretending that everything's all right, but really had to fight the depression. Then I saw the bright light and I saw my mom and my dad. They're the reason why I love no other. They're the ones that kept me going on. And that's when it ended. No more pain, no more stress, just parents showing love and happiness.
We may be young, but we have a voice that allows us to speak our mind. But when we try to stand up for what we believe in, society acts like they are blind. And when we try to raise our voices, society, they act like we're just a bunch of strange noises. I mean, yeah, we know our wrong from right, obviously more than society does. But when we speak up, they knock us down like they're the perfect society. In my 15 years of living, there never was. We're trying to help, but again, society thinks we know nothing because we are too young. And when we try to speak louder, all they try to do is shut us up and pull in our tongue. But I want you to hear me, and all the young people of today, we want you to listen while we spit straight facts, because we are children, but not all we do is play. What do you think we do in school? We learn about our ABCs and our 1, 2, 3s, but when we put 2 and 2 together, we don't get 4 no more. And in these quote-unquote ghetto communities, they are so intelligent, even though they are poor. Yeah, that's because we are smart. We come up with different answers that are correct. So now it's time for the youth to teach society, and for society's greatness to resurrect. So society, hear our problems and try to help. But don't just hear, listen. And don't say, oh well, because these are your problems too. We're just getting them in the air. So give the youth a chance. Don't just listen to the adults. Be fair. Because we are old enough to understand the world's problems, can't you see? So society, see me. Help me. Save me. Please, hear me.
Sometimes you need other people to say it better than you can. I just want to thank you both for your work and for articulating for us your experiences, and as I said, another data point. So, when we think about the intersection between kind of where we are and what our work is, it translates not only into how young people are experiencing their school, their life, but it also translates into how we dig deeply into our own data. So, if we go back to, right, and this is all, by the way, using this year's PARC scores. If we go back to where our map is in our community conditions context, one of the things that we'll see is that we're still mirroring the inequity that's already been constructed in a number of cases. So this is where our young people live. And so you know me, I like the quick and easy keys. So the larger the circle, the higher the rate of chronic absence in this particular slide. The smaller the circle, the lower the rate of chronic absence. Now, there are individual schools, which we'll get to later, who have moved this, but overall the trends, and again, this is based on where young people live first, not where they go to school, right? Mirror very closely that same red line map that we've began this with. And part of, again, why this is important is because, yes, it's about personal responsibility. I get that. But you've got to have a level playing field at the same time that you start talking about individual characteristics. That says to me, we don't yet have a complete level playing field. So, you'll remember last year that I shared these bubbles charts at last year's CEO Institute. The bubbles represent the poverty groups, and what we did was we used, in order to keep consistency, we used the same poverty rates that we used last year, which were the 2015-2016 farms rate for the school year, along with, but what we did was we just inputted this year's PARC scores, right? So that we could see the different levels of poverty within a school and how that matches to that school's performance. So we're going to zoom in for a minute on the 90 to 100% poverty band for grades 3 to 5. So what's really interesting when you look at this is that, so the axes on the graph, just so that you know, represent ELA on the y-axis and math, mean math score, right, on the x-axis, right? So up and down, ELA, left to right, math. And so what we did was we charted schools, we plotted schools, and that dotted line, there's a dotted line across the page and down the middle that is our district average, okay? It's our district average, not where we want to be, but where we are now. And one of the things that's interesting to me is the schools that are circled, which I am in no way, shape, or form expecting you to be able to see all of those, but I'm just going to read you some highlights. What's interesting about the schools in that circle is they fall within the band, even though, right, even though these are schools in the 90 to 100% poverty. These are schools that actually scored above our district average for ELA and math, right? So they have the highest concentrations of poverty, according to our 2015-16 analysis, but they are scoring above where we would necessarily predict that they would be. So some of those schools are circled, serve, again, our highest and neediest and most concentrated poverty, right, neighborhoods or young people from those neighborhoods, but in both ELA and math for grades 3 through 5, schools like Windsor Hills, Cecil Elementary, yeah, you better give yourself a little shout out. You're not gonna get it any other place but here, so let's do that, right? Lockerman Bundy, George Washington, Mary Ann Winterling, New Song is still that little bubble at the top where Hint, hint, they actually exceed schools that have far lower poverty rating than they do. Edgewood, Abbottson, North Bend, right? Now again, we're not where we need to be, but if everybody remembers, right? What did I say? Everybody's gotta grow. Because at least if we're growing, we'll eventually hit the target. I said to the sun, I will continue to say, we're not gonna do 11%, need I say more, proficient and advanced, and college and career ready, as dismal as that is, we're not gonna go from 11% to 90% in a year. That's just not gonna happen. But if we are taking the chunks, if we are reclaiming the ground, right? Year over year, eventually we will. That's the goal. Next piece, and these are just subsets. 2016-17, again, Park scores grades 6 through 8. This is the 80 to 90% poverty band. And what you'll see here is the group of schools, right? And again, in that upper quadrant, they're not where they want to be. They're not where they need to be. They're not at their final destination. But they are performing, even with 80 to 90% of young people coming to them who live in poverty, who represent those red and orange sections of that map. They are performing for grades 6 through 8 above the district average, right? So schools like Hamilton and Marie G. Faring and Armistead Gardens, right? Schools like Morrell Park and Dickey Hill and Lakeland and Commodore John Rogers. Schools like Mount Royal and Margaret Brent and Cross Country. And there were a lot of y'all that came really, really close, but you didn't make the cut. Okay? So what that says to me is we have pockets to build on. That the narrative that this is some kind of sinkhole for state dollars is a false narrative, and I reject it. You all are doing the work. We just have to accelerate it, and we have to increase the pace. The other piece, which is very interesting, that we took a look at, was when we looked at the growth, right? Because again, remember what I said, it's not just absolute performance. It's, are you moving, are young people better for having spent time in your school? That's the bottom line. Are young people better off? Do they have greater access as a result of spending time with you? Okay? And so when we looked at this, one of the things that we found was that when we looked at growth just based on performance level, right? What we found was that 25.6% of our students in grades 3 through 8 in ELA grew 1 or more performance levels. Now what I want you to keep in mind about that is that that means there are classrooms in our city where young people are coming and not only making a year's growth, and let's be clear, at the higher standard, that's harder to do, right? Because within the new college and career readiness standards, we can't say Common Core anymore because it sets people off, right? But in that new realm, in that new target, maintaining a year's growth doesn't mean you're just regurgitating the year before. So, we have 25% of our young people who grew 1 or more years as a result of having been with us, but then we have 19% of our young people who actually lost ground. So the question is, how do we build on the green box and the blue box and move to, right, the goal of all of our young people being college and career ready? And then you can take a look. These are the figures for math. So in math, we have about 19, almost 20% of young people who, okay, sorry, the mom and me saw the spilled juice, sorry about that. In grades 3 through 8 grew more than 1 performance level. So what we did was we took a look and we said, who are the schools with greater than 20% of the students who were in performance levels 1 or 2 previously, last year, who then moved them to performance level 3 or higher. Who are the schools that did that? And when we look at those schools, we have small but very powerful group. Charles Carroll Barrister, Stewart Hill, Wolf Street, Edgewood, and Abbottson. Now again, there were other schools that moved, you were close to the cutoff, but again, the message here is, it's not all gloom and doom, folks. There are pockets of excellence. When you can move 20% of your kids from one test administration to the next, and when, by the way, a tour or a visit by the CEO verifies what the data says, right? So some of these schools I've walked. I've spent a half day at Wolf Street. I know why that moved the way it did, right? It means then that we have the pockets of excellence. We just have to not be afraid to leverage them. We can't do it in silos. We can't do it by thinking we've got it all in our building. We have to reach out, we have to make the calls, and that's part of what we're going to do as part of our work together. Just a couple more. So one of the, there we go. So part of why we take the time to look at SGP, and this is the student growth measure that is used, by the way, for a large number of schools. It's the student growth percentile, and it is the measure that the state of Maryland is heavily leaning towards using to chart growth. So part of why we use this is because it's highly likely, folks, that this will be how the growth of our schools is communicated moving forward. So even I had to get tutorials to make sure that I get it. But I will walk you through briefly. Don't worry about getting it now, but just know that part of why this matters is because this will probably more than likely be how growth is judged within our schools. One indicator. So to think about growth, what they do is it answers the question, how much progress did a student make compared to students with the same prior test scores? So it looks across and it says, okay, this is where young people who are all at a level 600 were last year. Where are the places that actually moved young people? How did young people move compared to, in 1 year, other young people across our district who started in the same place, right? So for educators, for those of you who want to say, well, yeah, my kids didn't start where some other people's kids did, this SGP attempts to get at that question, okay? So what we do know is that typical SGPs, when they're used in other districts and in national data sets, tend to range between 40 to 60%. What we also know is that the best practice method that is usually the indicator for significant, notable, or high growth is any range, and you'll see that, that's kind of that orange. So typical is 41 to 60, high is 61 to 80, and very high is 81 to 100. All right, for now, not gonna go through an extended tutorial, but what you need to know is 61 and above is considered high growth, all right? So when we looked at our schools, we said, well, okay, if we use this method with our schools, then what does it look like based on our current, right, our current mark this year? And again, we didn't come up with no schools. We didn't say there's no school in the district. We didn't say there's no place, right, in the vast land of Baltimore City schools where anybody's doing anything. What we came up with was that even here, we have schools that are moving young people at nationally recognized rates of significant growth. Some of those schools that are here now, I would say there are the four with the highest median, and we took those that were about 70% or above: Wolf Street, Midtown Academy, Thomas Johnson, and Calvin Rodwell. These are our schools. These are schools that, if you look across the city, are serving, in some cases, some of our young people who come from the most challenging circumstances. They are also schools that service young people who come from communities where there is greater investment, and they are still moving them, which is why you have to look at growth. And it is what I have said, and God bless the principal and teachers at my kids' school, because you know it's hard having CEOs' kids in your school. And back when we first registered them, I said, don't tell me about their reading scores. I want to know how you moved them, because I taught them to read. What are you going to do? Okay? So this is a question that applies to all of our young people. And we have a variety of economic levels within our district. So it's not enough just to look at the absolute score. While that is important, it's also about how are we growing. And we have examples of schools here in the district that are moving. When we looked at, and it was very difficult to find, and again, it's okay because we're moving, but again, it's the urgency. I don't want 4 schools. I need 40. Right? I don't need 8 schools. I need 80. So when we looked at, is there somebody, who are the schools who have the highest median in SGP in ELA for both grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8? New Song Academy. And part of why I was watching New Song, for those of you who were here last year, if you weren't here last year, don't worry about it, is because last year we gave a shout out to New Song, but I said, well, let's wait and see. You remember that? We're the New Song people. Remember? And I said, let's wait and see. Let's see if it holds. So that you know, it held. Okay? Yes, with the first year principal. So part of what we need to do is to be able to then say, okay, so on the algebra note, so let's go a little bit higher, and what you're going to see here is a mixed list, because Algebra 1 is taught also in middle school as well as high school, is we looked for who are the schools with the greatest average 2-year trends in Algebra 1 scores when we look from 2015 to 2017. And we have schools that are, again, moving young people from where they are when they arrive, and their time is well spent having been in these schools. So schools like Francis Scott Key, Thomas Jefferson, Baltimore Design School, Baltimore School for the Arts, Patterson Park, and Baltimore Leadership School for Young Women. Now again, part of this is so that you know is we have a variety of schools, and that's what I need you to see. Because see, I know how y'all are. You put up things, and then all y'all want to say is, well, yeah, but they don't have this, this, and this. And I don't have this, this, and this. And they're not in my section of the city. And they don't have my kids. One of the great things about what we saw when we did this analysis was that there were so many different cuts to the data, and we saw schools that serve relatively diverse populations of young people. And what that message says to me, for the person who has to hold the all district view, now I know y'all are into this is my little island, thank you very much, I got my little bit of autonomy, little bit, I know. Right, I got my autonomy, so I'm just going to do mine. This has got to be all of us, folks. We have got to be moving and learning. There are communities that have survived decades, centuries across the globe living under the burden of an overall narrative of inferiority and incompetence. But you know what those communities do in each and every one of them, right? And this is true, and you know, I'm not just talking about Southwest Baltimore, right? I'm talking about if you read the accounts of concentration camp prisoners who rebelled and still taught their children while they were under, right, the threat of extermination. Whether you talk about young people who were educated in swamps when it was illegal for them to read, when you talk about girls who under the threat of life still put out a book, people don't want to hear us fixate on what we don't have control over. What they want to know is, are you adding value to the young people that you see every single day? What these slides say to me, what this analysis says, and we could cut other, and so I welcome you to do your own cut, and you can send me the email of where your school is when you did your cut. But what I want us to do is to not be fixated on the narrative that is a counter-narrative. What I want us to do is what those communities throughout history and throughout the world have done, and that is to incubate our young people ourselves. Incubate them by giving them the opportunity to perform and to be heard like we did today. Give them the opportunity to be able to read and create text like Brown Girl Dreaming. That is what we have the responsibility for. Our responsibility is to provide the incubation and the protection to develop the resilience that they can then be the example of the counter narrative that whatever crazy blogger, and we got a lot of them here, or whatever naysayer is going to say. I will say it again, I reject that narrative, and I do that with the power of what we just saw in the data. So, when we take a look at the potential of our young people, and I'm going to give you a little breather, about 1 minute, I just want us to be able to also, and by the way, the reason why I used the Mary McLeod Bethune quote was because during this last budget cycle, when it got really hard, most times it was fine, you guys were incredibly supportive, but you know, on the days where I was like, what the heck have I signed up for? I pulled out a biography of Mary McLeod Bethune, which I hadn't done in a while. I went through my phases with her. You know, when I was little, I loved her. When I was like, you know, radical undergrad, I was like, nah, I'm gonna do somebody else. And now that I have been, what I like to at least think, a relatively seasoned educator, I went back. And one of the things that stuck through me and helped me get through some of the rough days when you're sitting here across from people who say, why would, you know, you guys are a sinkhole. Why would we give you that money? And I'm thinking, wow, you are calling living, breathing human beings a sinkhole. That's really deep, right? Because again, I grew up with incubation. So, you know, I'm processing that, and I went back and I thought, man, this is really deep. And I picked up, and it had to be God, because I was in the library with the girls, and I went back and I just happened to be walking down the aisle and saw a biography on Mary McLeod Bethune, and I picked it up and I read it. And the piece the piece where I shut the book and put it away and said, I'm not going to bellyache anymore about my deficit, I'm going to push regardless, was when I read the story of how in the middle of the night, after she had just built her residential girls' school, she had about 100 Klansmen roll up in the middle of the night in sheets with torches, right, to descend upon 3 female teachers and 75 girls ages 15 and younger. And girls are freaking out, because who wouldn't be? And what Mary McLeod Bethune did in that moment was she told them to shut off the lights inside, wisdom, and I want you to sing. She had those girls with the threat of Klansmen on horses, with the lights out, begin to sing hymns. And they sang hymns, and the Klansmen were totally confused. Now, I got a couple of Bible stories I pull out that are very similar. But I got to tell you, that medal that she showed in that moment, after I read that story, I closed the biography and said, you know what, we're going to be okay. That's what our young people need to see us do. We need to be the ones that say, don't worry about it. I know what they say about you, but I know who you are. That's our work. That's what we have to own. So what I want to do when we come back, I'm going to give you a 5-minute break because I told you it was long, but I'm going to give you a break. 5 minutes is I want to walk through with you what we are going to do to get there. Because, see, the passion is great, but I'm old now. And like passion after a while, you know, and I've got the chief of staff over here laughing because she's like, yeah, you haven't let the passion thing go. Like, you still, right? Passion is cute. Passion will get us motivated for this room, but without a plan, we will not move. So what I want you to do is meditate on your passion, do your reflection, take a 5-minute break, and then what I want us to do is walk through what the plan is. But as you reflect, I want you to reflect on the fact that we have pockets of excellence in this city. This is about expansion. This is not about recreation. And I want you to think about, in your opening address, particularly principals, how many teachers do we have here today? Woohoo! I want principals to think about one thing as you greet your teachers back in the building that you're going to do to incubate your staff. And I want teachers to think about what you're going to do to incubate your young people. What are you going to do when you get back that is going to help them internalize their greatness rather than re-traumatize them? Because we do some of that. Now, this is a happy time, and we're live streaming, so I'm not going to go there. But we also have pockets in our schools, our classrooms, and our districts where we are actually re-traumatizing young people who have already been traumatized. So we got to own that too. But I want you to take a break. I want you to meditate, enjoy whatever passion you're going to tap into, share it with somebody, and then in 5 minutes, and you're going to hear my voice, and I'm just going to roll, we're going to get into, so what's the plan? And where are we going? All right, so take a 5-minute break. Thank you, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. So I want to be able to move a little bit. Thank you much.
You can either do this at the end, or you can leave with her because she lost her diamond. It's a diamond necklace.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. All righty. Good. I'm glad I gave you some stretch time and fellowship time. So before we move into what the what the plan itself is, which we are calling Blueprint, and I'll get to that in a minute, I just want to take about 2 quick minutes, really quickly go through some slides. They'll be posted. But because we're in an age where people throw the word equity around a lot to mean a lot of different things, I think it's important that we as a district know what our definition of equity is. Now, you can still have your own personal definition, and that's really great, but you need to know what our district definition of equity is. And so one of the things that the board has been very committed to, and let me tell you, not every school board stakes their claim and their capital on equity, right? It sounds good, but when you get down to it, a lot of people don't. And the board actually was delving into this when I arrived and has just been completely supportive of us really, again, using an equity frame. So when I reference equity, equity is not equality. It is not equal, it is not same, right? So that's kind of that cutesy drawing. I'm not too cutesy, but Jenny is, and she found, well, actually, I shouldn't say that because you're actually not cutesy either, but she found this for me. And we haven't found anything that works better as just that image. Equality is everybody gets the same. Equity is people get what they need, right? So that's why knowing where young people come from is really important. So the box levels are different, right? The box levels are different based on where young people come in terms of their needs. So when I say equity, I mean giving young people what they need, not making everything same. Because same is not going to get us movement, okay? So I just want us to be clear on that one. And then when we are looking at equity, and I had a live example of it this week, what that means for us is the choices that we are making for the future. Because remember, like we talked about, you know, it's easy for me to sit here in this seat and critique, you know, 1940s, 50s redlining, knowing that there have been housing decisions made over the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? There are also educational decisions that are made. So when we look at equity, we look at what we have control over. This spiral just represents some of those areas where we're beginning to look and ask ourselves, are we making available to young people what they need, or are we just doing same, or are we just doing it like a jump ball, throw it up in the air, and the survival of the fittest. If you're strong enough and you can elbow your neighbor, you get the resource. And if not, and you happen to be a new principal or somebody who is trying to get their head on shoulder, well, you missed that resource. So when we are looking at things like school choice and adequacy work, 21st century schools, our middle grades work group, that's the lens. When we say equity in motion, what does it look like? It's not just a nice term. It means actually looking at our bodies of work through a lens of getting young people what they need. So we've done this with a couple of slides. The first one, 21st century, and we had, to the credit of some of our elected officials, we had a couple who said, well, you're just giving 21st century schools to these kind of neighborhoods. And so instead of being really defensive and saying, absolutely not, we asked the question, well, are we? And we put it up on that same map. That's why we're staying with those condition index. And we're kind of monitoring what that looks like, and we saw that actually we do. Actually, we do have representation, but we want to watch it, right? I will tell you, we didn't put the slide up here, but Jenny who's done a fabulous job, by the way, with OAA on the data analysis. Our CIP dollars, though, looks a little different. We've got some work to do on our equity and the distribution of our CIP dollars. And I'm saying that as a CEO. It doesn't look like this. But again, if we're not willing to put it in motion, then equity is a nice term, but it's not really changing anything for kids' lives. The other place that I'm doing this, where's Dennis Jutras? There's Dennis. I put gifted and advanced learning up there, one, because I know Dennis has incredibly thick skin. No, and I say that because not everybody wants their department's work put on a map in an equity presentation. But one, I know Dennis has thick skin, and two, I know he has done work to really lift this. So what we did was we took our gifted and advanced learning sites and we, again, put them across the same map on community conditions. And so one of the things that we saw and that we're seeing, and again, Dennis is addressing, like he's taken this on, but in his kind of courage of being transparent with the work, what you'll see is that there are areas of the city where there are currently no gifted and advanced learning programs. Like there's none, like there's whole bands. Like right over here, this section, right in here, if you're orange or red in there, and your identification score pops, there's no GAL site anywhere close, right? So this is what I mean when we say equity, and we're using it for our work to make real decisions. It's not a feel-good term, like, oh, we're about equity. No, if we're about equity, what does it look like in getting the young people in every section of this city what we need? And if you're a principal and you're in one of those sections, or you are a teacher leader and your school is in one of those sections where there is not currently a GAL site, then you as a team need to ask yourself, do we need to become one of those sites? Because we're denying our kids access to that learning opportunity, okay? And then final example, when we look at our ESOL sites, so our English language learner population is growing exponentially. And as a matter of fact, I just want to let everybody know, and well, we're still live streaming, but I just want everybody to know, in terms of student enrollment, if you think we have enrollment problems now, my friends, if it were not for the exponentially increasing number of immigrant students in our school district, go ahead, I know, underneath, we'd have an even bigger gap than we have now. So part of what we were doing, again, when we're looking, again, and I need to tell you so that you know, that's how we're doing it in central office. Don't call me because you want some special little favor, because I'm going to go right back to the map. And when we looked at the ESOL sites, what we're seeing is that we have pockets of growth within the city of like 30%. No, 3%. Is it 3%? Yeah, so changes just in 1 year, and we're tracking these far more closely than the district has done in the past. Where we have the darker areas are the places with the largest growth, and you'll see no ESOL sites. Now we have some, right, that are schools that have been holding these young people and these families for long periods of time and are experts at doing it, but we can't continue, right, to just say, well, you know, Hampstead Hill will take care of it, or, you know. Patterson Park, thank you, Principal. Patterson High School, sorry, right? We can't continue based on this map to think that like 1 or 2 schools, see, that's what happens when you sit up front. You can wave if you want me to call on you, right? We can't continue to rely on those same schools as, oh, those are the schools that serve those kids. Those kids are across our city, and that's what this map says. So we have to look and say, so there's some of you who are going to have to think about what does being an ESOL site mean, and then pick yourself up and go to some of these other schools that have been doing it for a long time and take a look at what it means, because your population is shifting. So I only say that to say that that's what equity is. All right, when we talk about it here, I don't know what it means in other sections of the school districts. I'm not CEO of all those school districts, and I'm really glad I'm not, okay? But here, in this district, equity means getting every young person what they need. It does not mean same, okay? Great. So, now let's get on to this question of where we're going. And I think part of what I just want to revisit is the fact that, you know, I started out last year talking with young people, talking with folks, excuse me, across the city, a lot of my early community meetings, and a number of you throughout the year started hearing about these 3 focus areas, right? And the 3 focus areas grew out of, they were not just me on an Amtrak ride saying, hey, I think we got to focus, let's try these 3. Right? They came from what we actually heard, what we saw in the data, what we heard from our young people, what we heard from families, communities, and that was actually verified the more that we and I had an opportunity to get feedback. But then the question became, well, okay, that's great. Like, we're glad you got these 3 areas, right? And so I'm just going to remind people, right? The areas, the themes that we were focusing on, the areas are student wholeness, literacy, and leadership. And those are great. they sound good, and they got us through maybe the first half of the year. But eventually we have to know again, right, what we're going to do with it. And so part of what we did, let me give this to somebody. Sorry. Part of what we did was we commissioned a group of your colleagues, those in central office, those in schools, who committed to going deeply in looking at what does it mean to actually try to move a school district using the lens of student wholeness, or using the lens of literacy, or paying attention to leadership. And I want to just commend right now, because again, in the middle of a budget crisis, there were people who thought that's all we were doing. That was not all we were doing, just like it wasn't all you were doing. And so one of the things that I just want to commend the Chief of Staff, Allison Perkins Cohen, J.D. Merrill, did an absolutely fabulous job in leading that work. Sheila Brown, Dr. Sheila Brown, who is here with us today for the launch of the blueprint, they all took the task of saying, how do we begin to develop a joint understanding and then a plan that makes these three areas not only living and breathing, but enables us to point directionally where we're going, how we're going to get there, and then what the focus of our work is. Because that's what I heard for like the first 4 or 5 months I was here. We don't know where we're going. Where are we going? What's the direction? Well, you asked, now you receive. And so the way that these groups went about the work was they did, in addition to forming the work groups, these groups took on research. They said, well, let's look at the latest research. What's going on internationally? So we actually were very fortunate that the timing in which the team was doing this deep dive was at a time where the Kirwan Commission was also looking at international best practices. So it gave us the opportunity, and I think very powerfully, to be able to align our work with the team of folks who are going to be charged, or who are charged with determining our next, the next iteration of our school funding formula, right? So we looked at international benchmarks of excellence. We also looked at comparison districts, right? Because we have comparison districts, other urban districts across the country who are doing this work, who have been doing it longer in some areas, and in some cases have things that we can learn from. We wanted to model what I asked you to do this morning, and that is to not assume you can do it all by yourself, but learn from your colleagues. So some of our groups went out and visited other school districts where we heard and saw great things were beginning to take form. And then we also looked at our local context, very much like we did today. Where are the pockets of excellence in our own district? How do we build on those? And then we held focus groups with folks like you, with school leaders. So we had principals weigh in a number of times in small groups and tell us, oh God, that's way off. That doesn't make sense. This is how it would make more sense, more pertinent. Same thing with focus groups of teachers. And so where we are right now, right, is at the place where this blueprint really should be the foundational plan for how we will address equity within Baltimore City. It allows us to have identified priority areas, and because I've said it before, but I'll say it again, we can't get great at 15 things at once. You already have to do 30 things at once every day. Every day you're in your building or you're in your classroom. So as a district, right, these three areas represent where we're going to get deep, but also go deep, but they also represent areas that we have pretty good sense are high leverage impact areas. We didn't just randomly pick them. We picked areas and levers that we believe if we go deeply with this, we will make great advances to actually addressing the equity that we all say that we want to achieve. So, what I'd like you to do now is on your seats, now you may have already written notes on them, there's a little snake excerpt. Does everybody have the yellow snake excerpt? Okay? Good. So what I'd like you to do now couple things. I'd like you to take 3 minutes. You don't have it, Harold? You have it? Okay. You look like the cat that had eaten the canary or something. Oh, stop. Don't you say, Laura. Don't you dare say. And if you know, so what I want you to do is I want you to read this excerpt. And what I want you to do is read with two things in mind. As you read this excerpt, yes, and if you need one, thankfully Michael Rading has them and he's passing them out. As you read this excerpt, I want you to keep two questions in mind. First, what is this student writer able to do as a writer? What is this student able to do as you read through this excerpt? And then, as kind of a secondary question, what grade? Just kind of give a grade range of where you think, what grade level you think this writer is, okay? So take 2 or 3 minutes, read that, and then I'm going to give you time to have a conversation with your neighbor about kind of what your reactions to these two questions are when you read this piece. But first, give yourself the gift of a 2 to 3 minute scan, and I promise I won't do random cold call pop quiz on the content of the writing, but I would like you to read it, okay? Great, so take about 2 minutes to do that now. All righty. So if I could get you back. Great. Much appreciated. No, and that's good. I mean, I gotta say, you know, while I like to give you time over your muffins, I don't mind people taking extra time to talk about student writing. That's never gonna tick me off. So that's a good thing. So a couple things. We don't have, you know, I wanna, because I'm mindful of the rest of the day, but just by way you and your group know what you talked about, I will let you know. We have, I think the range, you know, most people talk about kind of the vocabulary that the young person uses, the command of vocabulary, the description, right? The content that is within this piece, the sophistication of the language usage. A lot of folks in terms of the grade level, and I will say this includes, when I make these references, these are trends having, at least within Baltimore City, I know Sheila has done this with other groups, but within Baltimore City, we've done this with Business Roundtable. We've done this with philanthropic partners. We've done this with groups of city schools principals. We've done this with elected officials, members of the city delegation, city council. And so the trends tend to be around the same in terms of the themes. Ironically, between educator and non-educator groups. The range for the second question tends to be, I'd say a large concentration of people tend to put this at early high school, another large concentration middle, and then a few that get daring and say 4th or 5th. So you know where you fall, and that's okay. What I'd like to do now is play for you a video about the classroom that produced this writing. And what I want you to pay attention to is the classroom, is the interaction, is the young people and what they are doing. Okay? Without further ado.
It is now time for the eggs to hatch. The colorful red, white, and yellow striped coral snake hatches out of its soft egg with its 17 brothers and sisters. It's hungry for its first tasty meal.
Once we knew we were creating narrative nonfiction ebooks, it was time for students to start crafting their stories. A lot of our high-quality writing targets were things that were already familiar to students. We've been working on them all year, like using transition words or what we call power words.
If we're creating a list of synonyms, what do I mean by that?
Synonyms are something that means the same thing.
Okay, so something that means the same thing. Sir Jean?
Not worry.
Mouth-watering.
Oh my God.
That mouth-watering pizza.
Oh,
yeah.
shaking.
That's kind of a movement word too, right? But it's the shaking. You can infer he's scared. Wow, look at all this word pattern we're building.
We worked from model text, cataloging descriptive words that would help them create rich stories.
Is a hawk. Her wide wings extended.
Extended.
Extended? Yes.
Other targets were unique to writing narrative nonfiction, like including facts from all the scientific categories they researched, or discovering narrative techniques that the authors of our model text used to make their stories exciting.
That's our learning target. I can include a satisfying ending to my narrative nonfiction story. What I want us to do is look at our mentor text, Bullfrog at Magnolia Circle. And we're going to look at the beginning and ending. What is the similarity?
The white wooden house is mentioned 2 times at the beginning and the ending.
This type of ending is called a circular ending. Okay, so we know that in our ending, we want to end with the same setting.
I created a series of organizers to help students outline and draft their stories.
When I started working on my story, I used this planning page. On our planning page, we had to do our ideas in where, the start, events, problem, danger, what happens, and the ending. For the events, I wrote, she crawls in the grass searching for a shrew.
Each section of their story organizers had a different color and reminders of our learning targets.
This one's events. This one was habitat. This one was solution. This one was the ending. And this one was a problem and danger.
Students turned facts that they studied into elements of their stories.
This is the events paper. One of the facts I include was overlapping scales. In my story, I wrote, her long overlapping scales get ready to ambush prey that comes close.
When the stories reached their final drafts, we turned our attention to how we would read our stories in the recording studio.
And action.
Come on, you slowpoke, let's go.
If you were going to read out loud, you would have to have like a lab presentation list, and you would also have to keep a strong body to let it come out of you, and you can say it with expression.
The bright, shiny morning in May.
The sun is hot and bright.
In real life, the way we present ourselves and our work really matters. And unfortunately in schools, we often don't feel we have the time to allow kids to polish that, both their work and the way they present their thinking, to a point of real power and elegance. This classroom is a great example of a place where students were given the time and care to refine their writing, their scientific illustration, their oral presentation, their music, to create something of real quality and beauty.
4 big targets are pacing, voice, articulation, expression.
Speak with expression and change your tone of your voice throughout the story. Like when you had the exclamation points, you start to go out loud.
My feedback was for him on pacing. I gave him just right because it was appropriate, like pacing, because it was nice and smooth.
Students had the chance to self-evaluate by making recordings on our iPads.
The mongoose looks around after every step he makes.
I wanted every student to feel prepared and successful for our one day in the recording studio.
Suddenly, she feels the vibrations of a coyote.
Next, King Snake looks behind a log. It's a Virginia possum.
Cottonmouth slowly eats the bullfrog head first, then goes to a tree to digest. She finally gives birth to 12 live babies. Their keeled scales are light brown. Cottonmouth will leave her babies to defend themselves. But now, Cottonmouth is exhausted and finally goes to sleep in the spooky Florida Everglades.
All right, Xavier, yeah, you're good, Xavier, awesome.
I never get tired of watching teaching and learning. So one of the things that we included that excerpt to do is really to give us kind of a grounding picture and a grounding experience. Of course, we don't see everything that goes on, but the focused attention on learning, right? Kids doing real work, real scholarship, that video has done more to kind of communicate to a larger audience what we want classrooms in city schools to look like, feel like for our young people. I will say, I took great pleasure in hearing the sigh when the second grade pops up. I'm like, great, we're 8 for 8 in terms of these presentations, because that probably was like, oh my God, it's second grade. And again, we're not gonna get there overnight, but it is possible, right? That is not a private school shut up in the hills of the Swiss Alps somewhere. That is a school you can go visit today in Boston, Massachusetts, right? We have the makings of not only classrooms that look and feel like that for our young people in Baltimore City, but Baltimore City young people being able to produce that level of high quality work. So when we think about, where are we? Yes. So when we think about the blueprint, really this is about, and I love, again, these words, and so this one I'm gonna take a little. This is a city school student, class of 2017, graduate this past year from our school system, who said, possessing knowledge in my understanding of the world is the closest we can come to enlightenment, and perhaps that is why I have such a thirst for it. I question whatever I feel needs questioning, and I feel that it is my responsibility to understand the topic to the best of my ability. And in bold, simply put, I want to know things because the world is here, and so am I, right? So, when we think about student wholeness, this first area, right, we go back to what we touched on at the beginning, and that is our young people are whole people. They are not just their test score, and yes, we review PARCC scores, and we review chronic absent rates, and those are important data points. But they are not their data points. They are whole people with dreams, needs, desires, and experiences. So then the question becomes, that this group asked is, well, okay, what does the research say? What does it look like? And when they did the work, what's really interesting, and again, no surprise to many of you, but you should know, and we'll have a link, by the way, on the Blueprint website to all of the research and literature that the work groups read and experienced as part of this. One of the things that we know is that, particularly amongst our high school students, and there's I don't know if any of you got to see, I think Fordham put it out, if I remember, but it's What Teens Want from Their Schools, a national survey of high school student engagement. And it's just an update reminder that when we survey our young people, the same themes run clear, that it is about engagement, it is about being known, it is about having the opportunities, right, to develop all of their talents, and in our city, it is about addressing their social emotional needs. It is about recognizing that we have to have the supports in place to be able to deal with the fact that, again, we're gonna have young people who have just lived through the most violent summer that Baltimore has had in a number of years. And so what student wholeness says for our work is that we have to be able to address that. So, we know what we learned. We learned and verified what you all know, that social and emotional learning and a range of enrichment opportunities are the key to student wholeness. So, what are we going to do in this area? And again, you're going to learn more about this, so I'm going to go a little surface because, frankly, the rest of the day is you being able to go deep with, frankly, some of your peers, members of the groups that actually facilitated, were part of the working groups, will facilitate your sessions today. So in advance, thank you and shout out to your peers who'll be leading today. But in terms of our focus areas, in terms of where we're going with student wholeness, it will be about helping students develop their relationship skills and being very specific about how we do that. Including responsible decision making, social awareness, right? Finally getting into what I have heard overwhelmingly, particularly from classroom teachers, right? That we have got to get at this side of kids, or you trying to get me to focus only on a reading circle is not going to cut it. So we took that. It is one of the anchors of our student wholeness work, and so we are partnering. And we'll be adopting the collaboration for academic, social, and emotional learning. Part of why I stumbled is because I just referenced them as CASEL. And the team did research. We talked with other school districts across the country about their work with the CASEL framework. And what we believe that gives us is a grounding, common framework as a school district, as a city, to not have kind of sporadic touches to attending to students' social and emotional needs, but together moving and saying this is how we're going to address in a very complete way, I should say comprehensive way, those needs. Yes, it does and will include addressing particular issues of trauma that we know our young people have, but if we address just the trauma without a framework for what a healthy school community looks like, then all we're doing is kind of isolating that one or two or handful of young people and not changing the environments that actually help them heal, okay? The other piece that we're going to be doing is implementing planning centers, and if you come up with a better name, I know I'll be getting 5 emails, why the heck are you calling them planning centers? For now, that's the name. If you want to nominate a new name, that's fine. Now that I got that out of the way. We're going to be implementing planning centers, and these will be in our schools. We'll get into the implementation in depth tomorrow, but suffice to say that we'll have early adopters, schools that will self-identify and apply to be kind of front runners in this work. But we will be implementing planning centers in city schools that will provide students with support and connect them to resources. And part of why we cited Cleveland Metro School District is because that was one of the school districts that our team visited when they went there. And it was really interesting because when I got the description, probably 2 weeks after I went to visit Cecil Elementary, and by the way, no, or I should say yes, I did coax and cajole Principal Roxanne Farr to come work for us at the district level, but not before. I went back to her school, and literally people were trying to describe to me the planning center, and I walked for the visit. You remember when we came for the visit, Roxanne? And I walked in, and I saw this room that Cecil has, and I said, that's a planning center. Now I see it, now I get what it is. And it's a place where young people can go that is staffed, in this case in Cleveland, by a professional who is trained on how to help young people in the midst of, right, the daily craziness of life in school, have a place to go to decompress, to get immediate support, right, without immediately triggering our suspension protocol, right? Where is the safe space within the school where we can do that, okay? And so that's one of the things we're going to be doing. And then the other piece, which is just as important, quite frankly, is ensuring a range of enrichment opportunities. Because this is not all about, let me, this young person, not every young person needs, 10 months of intense therapy. I remember talking to, I think it was Principal Guzman at the time. Is Principal Guzman here this morning? He probably isn't. I think their school's starting. Is he here? Did you wave at me? No, he's not here. Anyway, you can tell him I called him out, and then he'll feel badly. So Principal Guzman, I'll never forget going to visit his school, and they're one of the schools who's very, his former school was one of the schools, Matthew Henson, they were very thankful for the grant, for increased therapeutic services, whole 10 yards. But you know what he said to me? He said, this is great, I love it, thank you very much. But for a lot of my kids, If we just had, you know, a girls' rap group after school, I wouldn't need to send them to therapeutic services. If some of our young men had a way to connect their need for physical activity, and had a caring adult, right, who wasn't just focused on the winning, but focused on developing them through sports, the kind of character and values that we all say we want our young people to have, actually that would be just as helpful as all of the therapeutic services you're bringing in. So our definition of wholeness is going to attend to begin to do the work in both. We're going to be doing some of the mapping to say where are the enrichment opportunities in different schools? Why is it some schools, right? Kids have a plethora of activities, and there are other schools where there is nothing, okay? But this idea of student wholeness, and again, you'll see it over the next day, because tomorrow we're going to delve more deeply into telling you what the implementation looks like. But these are the areas where within student wholeness, we are going to begin this work full force. Also within this will be, and we'll talk about different cohorts of schools tomorrow. Again, just as by way of preview, initial adopters will self-identify, but there will be things that cover the entire district. We'll have a cohort of schools that are going to go deep in restorative practices as a part of this as well. So again, with student wholeness, we're starting with what's our common language. Oh, looking at time. What's our common language? How do we build this? How do we attend to the social emotional needs of young people? And how do we have enrichment that's also building our kids? In terms of literacy, I think the classroom video that we saw and our test results should be enough to let us know that, folks, if we don't get this literacy piece right, our kids we will be hobbling them. We will be hobbling them, right, in terms of their ability to access other content. And so the big takeaway around the literacy piece, and I thought that this quote was interesting, that this came from a young person. This came from an adolescent in Baltimore who's living through a summer like we just lived through, and in the midst of it all, that young person identified the importance of literacy in the lives of his peers, right? And the fact that in the midst of all this, we always like to say, well, you know, they're so caught up in what's going on, they can't focus on writing. Actually, this young person knows that literacy is the link to critical thinking, and it's the link to effective leadership and decision making. So we're going to be, within literacy, just some quick highlights, because again, you're going to go into this in your small groups. We're taking a deep look at our literacy curriculum, particularly grades 3 through 5, grade 6, and grade 9. We've kind of left, you know, our middle schools to float, our middle grades to kind of say, well, if we just get it right here, it's not what the data is telling us. So we'll be focusing in. The teaching and learning team will be doing a deep dive. We'll be partnering with some outside organizations like Strategic Achievement Partners, Hopkins and others to do a deep dive in our curriculum. And this will be actually looking in classrooms at how the curriculum is being taught, as well as do we need to make changes. The other piece is that we'll be looking at building up our expert coaching for literacy reps within each school, and then really looking at what does content literacy mean, right? Part of what we saw in that snake video was not just kids in a reading block. What we saw was kids also having command of content. And so what does that look like, particularly in our elementary schools, where we have squeezed out other content areas like science, like history? How does that become crucial to moving our young people's literacy skills? And then, finally, this area of leadership. And this really reflects what many of the folks in this room and others have said, that we are not doing what we need to do to be able to make sure you can lead from your space. And so with a renewed focus in this area, one of the things that we are going to be going deeply with, and I will say, I'll point out again, part of why I requested, I won't say plucked, but part of why I requested for for Roxanne Farr to come centrally was because we needed someone as a district who understood the principalship, who had a demonstrated track record of success, and who was committed to her colleagues' learning, not just in being a singular excellent principal. So I am incredibly excited that Roxanne's going to be helping us lead this work. And what we learned and what was reinforced for us through that work was that we know principals are key to student learning, and we know that we need teacher leadership, that principals alone, which is why you're here with your ILTs. And so what we're going to be doing is continuing with a lot of our cycles work, but we're also going to be delving more deeply into how do we leverage our transformational principles. I heard over and over again from a number of transformational principles, I'm transformational, but I'm not really doing anything, right? And which I think says a lot about those individuals for whom being transformational, they want to use as a lever to move the entire district, not just to be transformational for the sake of transformational, right? So we're going to be going deeply on that. We will be also building out more school-to-school partnerships and kind of mentoring relationships, very similar to what we've built out with Commodore John Rogers and their 3 partner schools, SIG schools, right? So what does it look like? And I had the privilege of being at those 4 schools kind of opening retreat, and the power in the room of having teachers across schools working, the power in the room of principals together sharing the development of their teams was incredibly powerful. And it enables us to build on best practices far more rapidly than if you're waiting for central office to come down with the next best professional development. That's not going to happen. So part of what we're building out in this leadership piece is how do we actually walk our talk and provide teacher leaders and school leaders with the opportunity to learn from one another. So the key around this that I want to leave with you, and I will do this, is that we say that we are about equity. I know that many of you had an equity frame long before I sat in any seat in this city or this district. But what I need us to understand is that in order for it to have lift and to be more than just a great service and a great opening, is we have to think through and commit to high quality implementation, and really it's high quality execution. Implementation kind of looks like put a recipe together and make sure you put it in play. Execution means that we are reflecting on every element of our practice. And finally, I will say this, and part of why, and I'm a huge C.S. Lewis fan, but this quote about courage is not some grand show that you do when everybody's watching. Courage is what you do when you are making your class lists that you are about to post. And which young people do you put with which teacher? And do you go based on, this is so-and-so's kid, or do you go based on what young people need? Courage is what happens when you decide that a move that you're making for your own school actually needs to be considered in light of what it will do for all schools. Courage is what we do when no one is watching, when these cameras go away, when we're back in our rooms, because we become one of 2 things. Either the equivalent of educational redliners, who future generations will look back on and say, why did they do that? Knowing what we know and what we just reviewed. Or we become the equivalent of those who said enough is enough. So Equity is not just about, courage is not just about what happens from the CEO post. Courage is about what you do back at your schools and with your young people. The blueprint is our way of moving in motion and direction together. The blueprint will only have meaning. I mean, at this stage in my career, I've seen enough plans. I don't want this to be another plan. And the way that it is not another plan is that we focus on execution. So the next 2 days, the remainder of today, next 2 days, are going to cover a deeper understanding of what this looks like from, again, some of your peers who actually worked on helping us put this together. And then tomorrow, really focusing in on what will implementation look like. What will it mean for my school this year and my school moving forward? And what are some things that you as a school community are going to have to talk about and decide about in terms of areas where you want to go deeply? So I'm going to let you go, but I will say this. As you leave, as you think about your opening of school, right, make sure that you give time to let your team know that this is why we're doing the work. We all need to be reminded, which is why I cherished my lunches with those 3 little girls at Bernard Harris. Whatever your equivalent is, do that, do it well, but don't ever underestimate the power of one courageous act, whether it's at the classroom level or the school level or the district level. Thank you. Have a fabulous day, but have an absolutely fabulous school year. Thank you.